The cabin was calm, the hum of the engine steady, and the young woman sat quietly in her seat, flipping through a well-worn book. Passengers around her barely noticed her presence. Just another traveler on a routine flight. But when the co-pilot emerged from the cockpit, his eyes locked on her. His expression froze. His voice carried a sharp edge of recognition. He didn't see a passenger anymore. He saw something else. "Major," he said aloud. The entire cabin went silent. The cabin lights glowed with that familiar dimness airlines used to lull passengers into quiet compliance. The engines hummed like a steady heartbeat, and the occasional ding of a call button or creak of the overhead bin punctuated the silence. Near the middle of the plane, a young woman sat quietly with a book resting in her hands. The pages were soft from use, the cover bent and worn. A copy that had clearly been opened and reopened many times before. She didn't look extraordinary. In fact, her entire posture seemed designed to keep her unremarkable. Chin lowered, hair pulled back loosely, clothes casual but neat. To most passengers, she was invisible, just another traveler making her way across the skies. She flipped a page, eyes scanning the text, though anyone who paid close attention might notice she wasn't really reading. Her gaze lingered on the same sentences longer than it should have. She glanced up every so often, not with the fidgeting impatience of a restless passenger, but with the trained stillness of someone always aware of her surroundings. It was subtle, almost undetectable, but it was there. A flight attendant passed, offering drinks and peanuts, but the woman shook her head politely. She wasn't hungry. She wasn't thirsty. She seemed content to simply sit and watch, though her eyes were always working, cataloging the details of the cabin. Then, a quiet ripple passed through the row ahead of her. The cockpit door clicked open. The co-pilot stepped out, tall and lean in his pressed uniform, scanning the cabin the way pilots sometimes did. A casual walkthrough, a moment to stretch legs before re-entering the cockpit. His presence barely registered with most passengers. A few glanced up, reassured by the sight of the uniform. Others ignored him entirely, headphones in, eyes glued to glowing screens. But when his gaze swept across the woman in the middle row, something changed. He froze mid-step. His eyes widened, the easy professionalism in his expression flickering into something sharper. Shock, recognition, disbelief all at once. He blinked, as if making sure his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. The woman noticed. She lifted her gaze from the book, calm, steady, almost expectant. For the briefest moment, their eyes locked. A silent exchange that carried a weight no one else in the cabin could have understood. The co-pilot's lips parted, his voice barely above a whisper at first. "Major!" Passengers nearby turned their heads. The word sliced through the quiet like a blade. The young woman didn't flinch, didn't nod, didn't deny it. She simply closed her book, resting it carefully on her lap. And with that small, deliberate gesture, the entire atmosphere inside the cabin shifted. The word lingered in the air like smoke. "Major." A few passengers exchanged curious glances. Some leaned subtly in their seats, their curiosity piqued. To most of them, it was just a title, maybe a case of mistaken identity. But to the woman sitting in the middle row, it was the sound of a door creaking open on a past she had carefully locked away. Her hands rested gently on the book in her lap, but her eyes stayed fixed on the co-pilot. His expression told her everything. This wasn't a casual resemblance. He knew. She studied him quickly, with the same precision she had once used on reconnaissance. He was younger than her, maybe by a decade, but his stance, his bearing, unmistakably military. The uniform was airline issue, but the posture belonged to a soldier. His gaze, sharp and unblinking, carried the weight of someone who had seen things most people couldn't imagine. "Excuse me?" she finally said, her tone measured, even. The co-pilot stepped closer, lowering his voice but unable to disguise the urgency in it. "You are Major Hale, 77th Airborne Division. Afghanistan." Her stomach tightened, though outwardly, she betrayed nothing. He hadn't just recognized her face. He had recited her identity with precision. That meant he hadn't stumbled across her by chance. He remembered. He was there. The passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably, sensing tension without understanding it. A flight attendant, noticing the moment, gave a polite but nervous smile as if to defuse it, then moved on. The woman, Major Hale, inhaled slowly. It had been years since anyone had called her by that rank. Years since she had left behind the dust, the gunfire, the heavy silence of desert nights. She had told herself she could bury it all. That the uniform folded away in her closet was the only reminder. But now, 30,000 feet above the ground, her past had found her. The co-pilot's eyes softened, just slightly. "It's really you. I never thought I'd see you again." Her mind reeled back, unbidden, to a memory she had tried to suppress. A mission gone wrong. The sharp rattle of gunfire against metal. The desperate scramble through smoke and chaos. And a younger soldier, the very man now standing in front of her, looking at her with the same wide eyes, waiting for orders that had saved more than just his life. She had commanded then with clarity, authority, certainty. But she had walked away from that life, vowing never to be recognized again. And yet here she was. "Not here," she murmured, her voice carrying a quiet edge. The co-pilot hesitated but gave a faint nod, understanding the unspoken command. To press further would mean questions, tension, and whatever secret she carried, it was not meant for this cabin of strangers. Still, the damage was done. Passengers whispered now, murmurs drifting like low waves across the rows. Some eyed her with newfound curiosity, others with suspicion. Major Hale closed her book and placed it carefully into her bag. Her cover of anonymity was gone. The past, it seemed, had boarded this plane with her. The whispers spread quickly, like sparks catching on dry grass. Did he just call her Major? Major what? Is she military? Why would the co-pilot know her? The cabin, once filled with the soft lull of engine noise and half-asleep passengers, was now alive with curiosity. Strangers craned their necks, subtle at first, then openly staring at the woman who had sat so quietly among them. Major Hale kept her posture steady, hands folded in her lap, her expression a mask of calm. But inside, her pulse had quickened. Every instinct screamed at her to contain the situation, to control the narrative before it slipped out of her grasp. She had lived her life by one code: never let them see you flinch. The co-pilot lingered beside her row, his hand brushing the seat back for balance, his eyes still fixed on her with that blend of awe and recognition. It was clear now to everyone watching. This wasn't a mistake. This was history bleeding into the present. A man across the aisle spoke up, his voice carrying a half-smirk. "What are you, some kind of war hero?" Hale didn't answer. Silence, she knew, was sometimes louder than words. The co-pilot, perhaps realizing the attention his outburst had drawn, straightened his uniform and lowered his tone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said with forced composure, "please remain seated. Everything is fine." But the reassurance fell flat. Curiosity had become suspicion, and suspicion always demanded answers. Hale reached down and carefully zipped her bag. Not fast, not defensive, just deliberate. A move meant to steady her nerves and signal control. Her eyes flicked briefly to the front of the cabin, gauging exits, counting flight attendants, measuring the distance to the cockpit. Old habits died hard. Then, from somewhere behind, a woman's voice asked the question that cut deeper than all the whispers. "Why did he call you Major?" The entire row turned toward her now, eyes pressed like spotlights, burning through her thin veil of anonymity. She felt the weight of expectation heavy on her shoulders, the same weight she had once carried in deserts and jungles, where men had looked to her for decisions that meant life or death. She raised her gaze slowly, meeting the co-pilot's eyes first. 1,000 unsaid words passed between them: regret, gratitude, recognition. Then she shifted to the passengers, her tone calm but edged with steel. "Some names," she said evenly, "aren't meant for public places." The words silenced them, but only for a moment, because silence in a crowded cabin only sharpened curiosity. And then, before anyone could press further, the plane jolted violently. A sudden pocket of turbulence rattled the overhead bins and sent drinks spilling across tray tables. Gasps erupted, hands gripped armrests, hearts leapt into throats. When the cabin steadied, all eyes returned to her. Not just with curiosity now, but with a new, unspoken question. Had the turbulence simply been chance, or was her presence on this plane something more? The truth, she knew, was coming.